and of course right here on the Quarantine Coast, and my friends and followers on Facebook. Good evening once again, and welcome to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in our country over the last week or so. And as I would normally say, Guyana is a very, very dynamic political society, and every week, every few days, there are so many important issues for us to discuss. I want to begin by dealing with an issue that you would have seen in the news over the past few days, and that is the leaked emails which Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan, leader of the Alliance for Change, sent to his counterparts in the diaspora and other members of his party in relation to the appointment of a chairman of GCOM. Now, you would recall that over the last 2 to 3 weeks, after the disclosure was made, after the president appointed Mr. James Patterson as the chairman of GCOM, you will recall that there was a preponderance of criticisms and condemnation from almost every important stakeholder organizations in this country, of course from the PPP and several prominent persons and personalities right across the length and breadth of this country. The AFC came out and said that they had nothing to do with the appointment of the chairman for GCOM. They said that the president did not consult them. They said that they had no part to play whatsoever in this decision. They issued a first statement, and because the criticisms continued, they issued a second statement reiterating that they had no involvement whatsoever in this decision, that they were not consulted, and that they did not participate. We in the PPP, we said that Mr. Raphael Trotman attended almost every one of those meetings. Mr. Raphael Trotman sat at the side of the president along with Mr. Joseph Harman in almost every one of those meetings. Yet we were told that the AFC played no part. You will recall that during those meetings which the leader of the opposition had with the president, on one occasion it was decided that a joint statement should issue by the leader of the opposition and the government, in which that statement should say that in the event that the leader of the opposition and the president fail to arrive at a consensual name for the appointment of a chairman for GCOM, that the two teams, the leader of the opposition and the government, would establish a high-level team coming from persons from both sides, and that team would explore the way forward in terms of arriving at a consensual candidate within the meaning of the Constitution. In fact, at the discussion, we had agreed that even if the Constitution has to be amended to bring in a foreigner, because we were arguing in the PPP that, look, if the president doesn't accept anyone in Guyana, well then let us go internationally. Let us go to the United Nations, because there are several experts on election and electoral matters working for the UN, and they would gladly serve as GCOM chairman. But currently, the Constitution prohibits a non-Guyanese from being appointed. So among the things that we discussed before we arrived at a decision to issue that joint statement was the establishment of this joint team that would explore all avenues, including the amendment of the Constitution, if that becomes necessary for the purpose of appointing a non-Guyanese should the president continue to reject Guyanese as unfit and improper for the position. After that meeting, Mr. Raphael Trotman, Mr. Joseph Harmon, and myself sat and we drafted that statement. He sat there, he drafted that statement with myself and Mr. Harmon, and that was issued the same night that it was drafted. A joint statement under the hand of the leader of the opposition and the president. And that went out in the public. Yet, when the criticisms started to come, when the condemnations started to come, the AFC, that duplicitous organization as it is, said that they didn't have anything to do with this matter. They were not consulted. They didn't participate in the decision-making process. Though Mr. Trotman was sitting there at every single meeting and participated like every other participant at those meetings. And lo and behold, the emails became public, and the emails revealed what a lie the AFC was and is still perpetuating upon the people of this land. Because the email says, written by Mr. Ramjatan, says that since, not the third list, since the second list came in, he went to the president and he advised the president that the president should reject that second list and the president should unilaterally appoint a person of his own choice. He ill-advised and incorrectly advised the president that the Constitution allows the president to do so. And this is a gentleman who is leading a party, who is in the government, and who is saying to you, and have said to you about 3 or 4 times over the past 3 weeks, that the AFC did not participate in that decision. They did not play any role in that decision. They were not consulted in that decision. And here it is in a private email to his own leadership and to his own members. He is saying to them, look, I told the president to reject the second list. I told the president that he has a power to make a unilateral appointment. I told the president that he should go ahead and make that unilateral appointment. How can you trust these people? How can the APNU trust them? More so you, the people of Guyana. How can you expect that anything that they say publicly is the truth? How can you rely upon them to represent you on any given issue? Because this incident here demonstrates and is part of a track record of inconsistency. It is not the first time that they have done this. They sat with the APNU at cabinet and they imposed VAT on private education. You recall that? The last budget, they sat at cabinet. Budgets are approved and important decisions are made and are approved at cabinet. And when you are a member of cabinet, you are part of that decision-making process, because cabinet's responsibility under the Constitution is not divisive, but is collective. So there is no individual responsibility at cabinet. When cabinet makes a decision, when a government makes a decision at cabinet, it is a collective decision. It is a decision of every single member who sits at that cabinet. Nagamootoo sits at that cabinet. Ramjatan sits at that cabinet. Patterson sits at that cabinet. Kathy Yu sits at that cabinet. Raphael Trotman sits at that cabinet. And they all make decisions. And when the decisions are made public and the public began to criticize and protest and condemn, they come out and say, no, they were not part of that decision. It is not their decision, it's the APNU decision. They did that for the VAT on education. They were very much part of that decision. And when push come to shove, when the public began to condemn them, when the teachers and the students and the parents came out and were critical of the imposition of VAT on private education, these people, these persons in the AFC, like hypocrite, said that they were not part of the decision and that they will go back and negotiate with the APNU to have it changed. The identical thing they did with the parking meter. They sat at cabinet, they deliberated on the parking meter contract. At one time, cabinet had summoned City Hall to come to cabinet to explain the contract. Cabinet had asked the Attorney General to advise on the contract. The contract was discussed at cabinet. And when the government was moving to implement the parking meter and the protests started in Georgetown and hundreds of people came out to protest the parking meter, the AFC came out and said that they were not part of it. And at the level of the city council, their deputy mayor took the same position and said, no, this is not an AFC decision. This is an APNU decision. And that we are not part of this decision. That is the duplicitous and snaky role that the AFC continues to play. And I don't know why. Why is it that even the APNU is tolerating them? Because how can you sit with me as an equal partner in government? You participate in decisions, you encourage me to make decisions, you advise me that I am acting correctly, and when I actually make the decisions and the decisions are criticized and are condemned, you run and hide and you say it's not you, it's me alone. This is the worst form of treachery. It is the worst form of treachery. They are betraying their own partner in government, the APNU. What you think they will do to you, the people of Guyana. It is the same thing that they said to the sugar workers. We will pay you 25% in wages. We will never close Gaisuku. Ramjatan and Nagamotu are on record in Berbice here at the WIM rally and at several other public meetings right across this region, telling the sugar workers that Gaisuku will never close estates and that they will never go without a job and that they will get an increase in salary. They went all to the order line and they said that to the workers. And what happened after the elections? They are advocating for the closure of the estates. Now, because the thing is going wrong on the ground, because they realize now that everyone has turned against them, 2 days ago they issue a statement that they are concerned about sugar workers. Can you believe these people? 2 days ago they issued a press statement that they had some executive council meeting and the executive council expresses concern about the welfare of thousands of sugar workers who are likely to lose their jobs with the closure of the several estates which the government is proceeding to do. Now the AFC takes the position that they are concerned with the sugar workers. After they sit at cabinet and they sit down with the government, they sit down with the president, when the president would have made that decision to close Rose Hall, to close Enmore, to close Wales, where their mouths were then? Where were their voices then? Where were their sentiments of concern then? When we spoke to them about it in Parliament, Ramjatan said, the sugar workers already said that they are not voting for us, so we don't care about them. He told leader of the opposition, Mr. Jack Deodat in the presence of Odinga Lumumba and Joe Hamilton in the National Assembly when we were eating in the lunchroom. That they don't care about sugar workers. Now suddenly, because they come to Berbice and Nagamootoo can't attend the graduation because people protested him, because he went to WIM recently and they refused to allow him to go into the community center, now they realize that they have no support on the ground, and like snake in the grass, they come out now and say, oh, we are concerned about sugar workers. When Nagamootoo was right here in Berbice and spoke at Rose Hall telling them that the estate will close by this year end. He didn't know, he didn't have concern then. He didn't have concern then. He was busy blaming the PPP. Now suddenly they have concerns. How can you take these people seriously? These people are highly duplicitous and highly hypocritical. Move over to the rice farmers, and it is the identical thing they have done to the rice farmers. They walk the length and breadth of this country, telling the rice farmers from Crabwood Creek to Charity that if you vote for the AFC, if you vote for the APNU, we will buy paddy for $9,000 a bag. Today they are denying that they ever said that. They are denying in the parliament. Nagamootoo is asking who said that. When everyone knows he was reported on the television, he was reported in the press, in the media, in the newspapers, saying publicly, both in Berbice and in Essequibo, that he promised rice farmers $9,000 a bag. And I can go on to give you more and more examples of the treachery, of the duplicity, and of the hypocrisy of the AFC. But that is their very nature. And I'm saying I don't understand how the APNU can even tolerate them. But that will not happen for long. The APNU is going to kick them out after a while. Because anybody who sits with you, eat with you, drink with you, sleep with you, and then stab you in your back, you will not tolerate that person for a very long time. You will not. No matter how important they are to you, you simply cannot coexist with such an animal. And that is the animal of the AFC. So that email was very revealing this week. It showed the true colors of the AFC. And then they issue another statement after the email became public. And they said that, oh, they only participated in the second list. They didn't participate in the third list. Who do these people think they're speaking to? Retards? Stupid people? So that email demonstrated very clearly to anyone who may have had any doubt about where this political party stands, that email ought to have answered those questions. And as I said, that email is not an isolated incident. It is simply a link in a long chain of hypocritical and duplicitous conduct by the AFC. That email simply is the last bit of evidence, compelling evidence, damaging evidence of how duplicitous and hypocritical the AFC as a political party is. And I want to move now on to the cutting of constitutional agencies' budget, which you witnessed last week, Friday, in the National Assembly. But it's important that I explain to you how this phenomenon came about. Why is it that these budgets are presented differently from the rest of the country? Because you would recognize that this is a new development. This never used to happen under the PUP government and in any government before. Well, you know, these people believe that they know everything and they want to do things differently because they are a new dispensation and they represent change. So one morning, while we were in the government and they were in the opposition, while they had a one-seat majority over us in the 10th Parliament of Guyana, some bright one, I think is Carl Greenidge, woke up one morning and decided, you know what? The way that the government of the day is treating with constitutional agencies is not correct. That at that time, the government included constitutional agencies as part of ministry's budget. So the Ministry of Legal Affairs, for example, that ministry's budget contained the budget for the judiciary. It contained the budget for the DPP office. It contained the budget for the Judicial Service Commission. Home Affairs Ministry contained the budget for the Police Service Commission. The Public Service Ministry had the budget for the Public Service Commission. And the various other constitutional agencies had their budgets dealt with as part of the ministry's budget. Now, what used to happen? And this we didn't start, we inherited this in government in 1992. Is that you will collect the budget, like I, for example, speaking for myself as a former Minister of Legal Affairs, the Registrar of the Supreme Court, who is the accounting officer, would prepare the budget of the judiciary in consultation with the Chancellor, the Chief Justice, and whoever it is that they have to consult. The executive doesn't have anything to do with that. They will prepare their budget and they will simply bring it to me. And I will include that as part of my ministry's budget and transmit it to the Ministry of Finance to be put as part of the national budget of the country. At the Ministry of Finance now, the Director of Budget would normally sit with all the accounting officers and go through their respective budgetary proposals. So if, for example, there is some aspect of the Supreme Court budget or the judiciary's budget that the Director of Budget feels the Treasury can't sustain that kind of expenditure for the particular financial year, well then that budget director will so indicate to the registrar and will say, Mr. Registrar, go back, look back at your figures and take out X amount because currently the Treasury can't sustain that kind of expenditure. So the registrar would go back and in keeping with the instructions or suggestions from the Director of Budget would look back at his entire budget and see what is more important than others and would amend his budget accordingly, obviously giving priority to the most important aspects of that budget. So let us say, for example, if they were supposed to buy a new car for the court system, if they have to now take $2 million out of their budget because the Director of Budget says that they can't afford a new car, well then they will take that car out. The point I am making is that the registrar who determined what is priority, so that independence and that budgetary and financial freedom was retained by the head of these agencies. When they got into office, even before they got into office, they said that that system that we had was completely wrong, that it undermined the independence of these agencies, that the Ministry of Finance should not be sitting with the head of these agencies, that it is wrong, it compromises and undermines the independence and financial autonomy of these agencies, and therefore that must be changed. And when they got into government, they changed it. And what they did, they put all the constitutional agencies together, and individually they directed it, they passed a law to this effect. The effect of the law is that these budgets for these agencies must be treated separately from the national budget. That's the first thing. Secondly, that when they are prepared, they must be sent to the parliament and not to any minister. And that a copy must be sent to the Ministry of Finance, because they don't want any interference. Well, guess what is happening now, as you would have seen. The Minister of Finance now comes with a cutlass to the Parliament, and he chops every one of those budgets. He chops millions of dollars out of these budgets without a word of consultation with these agencies. So when these agencies present their budgets, when the budgets of these agencies are presented on the floor of the National Assembly, the Minister of Finance moves a motion to cut these budgets by billions. The total budgetary allocations, proposals, which came from these constitutional agencies last Friday, was the total that came from them was 10 billion. 2 billion was cut out. 2 billion was cut out by the Minister of Finance. But significantly, how is the cut being done? If, according to them, these budgets can be interfered with, that if you interfere with these budgets, if you reduce it, you are interfering with the financial independence of these agencies, then where does the Minister of Finance get the power to cut from? Why is he cutting? Is he not doing the very same thing that they said was wrong? Instead of cutting the budget at the Ministry of Finance, they are now cutting it in the Parliament. What's the difference? How can you speak if, according to you, the financial independence is so important that the Minister of Finance can't interfere with their budgets? How come the Minister of Finance is authorized to chop the budget? These are questions that they cannot answer. They cannot answer, because all they have done is change the location of the cutting. But significantly, the Minister of Finance is now cutting without any regard for the agency's budget and what their priorities are. There is no interaction, no consultation, no discussion between the Minister of Finance and the head of these agencies to determine what should be cut out of their budget. So the Minister of Finance just makes one chop, and he doesn't care what comes off. He doesn't care what comes off. Before, it was a consultation that was done, whereby both parties agree, well, we will not buy a car this time. Here there is no interaction, and these agencies' budgets are just being slashed by the Minister of Finance. And let me give you some of the slashes. These are not ordinary slashes. They're not ordinary slashes, not ordinary cuts. Take, for example, one of the most important constitutional agency in this country, the judiciary. The judiciary. Now, all of us go there for justice. We go there for justice if we have a problem with our neighbor, our family, our enemy, or if our rights are taken away by the state, or any governmental agency, or the government itself violates any one of our rights, or the Constitution. The courts is where we have to go. It is the courts that ensure that there is law and order in this country. It is the court that ensure that the rule of law prevails. It is the courts that ensure that I am able to speak to you. It is the court that give me the rights and the freedom and protects that freedom so that I can come here and speak to you every Tuesday night. It is the court that does that. Because leaving up to the government, they will shut me off this television. But they are afraid of the court. They are afraid that I will go to the court and get an order. So important is the court. Now the court asked for 2.7 billion. 2.7 billion. They cut the court's budget by 879 million. Almost $1 billion they cut out of the court. Almost $1 billion. The court asked for 2.7 billion. They gave the court about 50%. About 50%. They cut the court's budget by half. Now, do you know what you are doing when you do a thing like that to a country? Do you know what you are doing when you cut the judiciary budget by half? By 50%? How will the court system run? And these people expect you to believe that they are serious about law and order and about crime and about security when they cut the court, the judiciary budget by 50%. Capital, the judiciary asked for capital, for the capital budget, they asked for 927 million. 927 million, that's the capital budget of the judiciary. They give the judiciary 310 million. 310 million from 9 million. They give them 3 million. They cut the budget by 2/3. The capital budget of the judiciary was cut by 2/3. And when you read what the budget, what the judiciary intends to do this year, you realize that if you cut the budget by 2/3, then it can't complete any of its capital program. So the judiciary this year wanted to build another magistrates court along the east bank of the Demerara, because from almost all the way from Linden all the way to Georgetown, there is only one magistrates court. It is at Providence, and it simply cannot handle the number of cases because of the new housing schemes at Diamond, at Grove, at Providence, at Eccles, and because of the increased traffic at the airport itself. And that was part of the PPP projects. It's not this government's project. It was part of my program to build a magistrates court, another magistrates court at Grove on the east bank of the Demerara. When they cut that capital budget, they cut out that magistrates court. At Camarang, there is a magistrates court at Camarang in Region 7. At Camarang, there is no magistrates court building currently. The building fell down. And the magistrates court is being held in a nursery school. In this year's budget, they were supposed to build a new court at Camarang. That was cut out of the budget. The Berbice High Court, for Berbice lawyers who are listening to me, you see all that flooding that is taking place every time rain falls? Well, in the budget this year, monies were set aside for the upliftment of that whole compound, especially close to the High Court, close to the building, that whole area, and inside, which is also flooded, inside the floor of the High Court. They were supposed to raise that this year and raise the outside to prevent flooding. That's the New Amsterdam High Court. Well, they reduced the budget from 900 million to 300 million. So that cannot happen either. And I can go on, but I just show you, just the judiciary alone. Then take the DPP. The DPP, they cut the DPP budget by $55 million. The DPP asked for 223 million and they give the DPP 174. 223, they give 174 million. A cut by nearly $55 million. The DPP asked for $19 million for its capital budget. 19 million only. That's the DPP is that office that prosecutes all the serious crimes in this country. Every murder, manslaughter, rape is prosecuted by the DPP. Every file that needs legal advice that the police sends from whichever part of the country, it goes to the DPP for advice. From region 1 to 9, every policeman that wants criminal advice in this country, criminal legal advice, he goes to the DPP office. The DPP asked for 19 million. They gave the DPP office 14 million. They cut it by 5 point something million. The DPP, they cut the current budget by 43 million. How can that office function? How can that office function? 19 million is a capital budget that the DPP is asking for, and they cut it to 14. Nagamutu spends $19 million to fly around the world. That is what was disclosed in the parliament. 19 million is spent on Nagamutu alone, just to fly around the world. $100 million is spent on him annually. His salary, his guard, his electricity, his allowances, his travels, his liquor, and his food is $100 million. But they don't have money to pay the DPP, to give to the DPP office to do the important task that the DPP office is constitutionally required to do. They are paying $100 million to special prosecutors through Basil Williams. The Attorney General office is paying $100 million to 6 prosecutors, their friends, and I call their names several times, their friends, to prosecute me for law books, to prosecute people for all kinds of politically driven offenses, but they're starving the DPP office. $100 million, 6 lawyers getting, but the DPP can get 19 million for her capital budget. That is what is taking place in Guyana. And when they come to you, you must explain, let them explain answers to these things. The parliament, they cut the parliament budget by $100 million. $200 million. They cut the parliament budget by. They cut the office of the Auditor General. They cut the office of the Auditor General by $100 million. 100 million, the Auditor General office. So they don't have money to give the Auditor General. Now, importantly, these are a set of people who masqueraded around the country talking about fighting corruption, talking about transparent government, talking about accountable government. Well, these are the agencies, these constitutional bodies are the agencies who are the watchdogs to ensure that there is constitutional governance, to ensure that there is transparent governance, to ensure that there is accountability in public office, to ensure that there is no corruption. These are the agencies. the Auditor General Office, all the service commissions to ensure that there is no violation of the Constitution, and public servants are protected, etc. These are the agencies. The Auditor General Office, the DPP, the Supreme Court. That is where you have to. That is where, if the president acted unlawfully, I have to go to the Supreme Court for justice. He violated the Constitution in the appointment of a chairman for GCOM. It is the court that I have to go. And this is what they're doing with these agencies. And these are the agencies that are supposed to watchdog them, are supposed to oversight them. So the oversight bodies are being slaughtered financially. They are being starved financially so that they don't get the money, they don't get the resources, and they don't get the wherewithal to do that which is necessary to demand from this government accountable governance, transparent governance, and no corruption. So this thing has a reason behind it. It has a reason behind it. And they're telling you that they don't have money. Well, Jordan put up 10 billboards to say that it is budget day, with himself posted on them. 10 billboards in Georgetown alone. I don't know how many are in Berbice. But there are 10 billboards in Georgetown with Jordan photograph saying that budget day will be on the 27th of November. Normally, for 25 years that we were in government, it used to be a little announcement in the newspapers. No, these people are different. It's not their money. When they see money, like they run crazy. They don't know what to do, so they just splurge it out. So Jordan decides that he will put up 10 billboards in Georgetown alone to tell the nation that it's budget time, and he has his photograph on them. Big billboards. Each one of those billboards, I am told, is $500,000. So 10 billboards is $5 million. And you can't give the DPP 19 million. But you can give Jordan 5 million to put billboards to advertise himself in Georgetown. You can give Nagamutu $19 million to go to India to collect a Tamil award, and to go to Trinidad to attend Patrick Manning funeral, and to go to Canada to visit his family. And Ramjatan, I saw, went to the Taj Mahal in India recently, he and his wife. So you can find money for that. You can find money to pay judgments where Basil Williams is losing cases every single day that he goes to court. That is where the money is going. The incompetence is costing you, the taxpayers, hundreds of millions of dollars. If you only count how much Basil Williams alone has costed this country, you will see what I'm speaking about. The Rhodesia matter, he should have never paid that judgment. Those people owe us taxes, and while we were in government, we were working out an arrangement to set off the taxes that they owe, because they said in the case that they undervalue their products when they enter Guyana. If they undervalue their products when they enter Guyana, well, then they are not declaring the right value and they're not paying the right taxes. So they have to be assessed by the Commissioner General to pay the right taxes. And that would have equal to the judgment, because they are here for about over 10 years now. No, but our bright Attorney General rushed and paid them 6.5 million US. Then you have Dipcon. He didn't file an appeal in time. He was 6 months late. The Court of Appeal chased him out. He went to the Caribbean Court of Justice, where he filed a wrong appeal. They chased him out. And they said even if he had filed a right appeal, he did not make sense what his arguments were. Did not make sense. So even had he filed a right appeal, they would not even have bothered with him. They would have still chased him out. That cost the state 2.2 million US plus cost. That's nearly $500 million. So just count Rhodesia, this matter, Dipcon. Then you have the other case that he lost to HN Subrim, 300 and something million. 300 and something million he lost to Subrim from Crabwood Creek. Then another matter is Brian Tiwari, the Hagbosh. The Hagbosh dumping site, where he paid Brian BK International 5.7 million US dollars. 5 point something million US on a mere letter. When you check those sums of money, you come close to nearly 20 million US. He has cost this country in 1 year, in 2 years. And those are the kinds of information that they don't want us to speak about. So they charge you. Basil Williams charged me for law books simply because of what I'm doing here. Because he doesn't want me to expose his incompetence and what he's costing the state. But of course I will not stop. I will not stop. So that is the wastage that is taking place in government at the hands of this administration. And when it comes to giving agencies monies they don't have, but they had money to increase their salaries by 50%. They have increased their per diem allowance when they're overseas. It used to be, I think we used to get a $25 or $30 a day. They are getting $500 a day. The government used to pay our hotel and then give you $25 a day for meals. The hotel used to be like $100 a night and $25, I think, for meals per day. They are getting $500 per day per diem allowance alone. And they can travel with their spouses. We were not allowed to travel at government cost with our spouses. But they can take their husband and they can take their wives, and the government pays for that. And they don't have to bring back receipts. We used to have to bring back receipts. And these are the people who have the audacity to talk about corruption. And that is how they are bleeding the treasury of this country. And that is why sugar workers have to punish, rice farmers have to punish, and they can't find money to pay public servants bonus. They were saying that the PPP is so corrupt that the PPP used to steal 300 billion a year. Well, if that is true, where did the PPP use to get money to pay sugar workers increase, pay public servants increase, and then pay all of them bonus? We used to pay an increase in salary in December, retroactive 5% to January. So you get 5% per month from December to January, retroactive. You used to get your salary, and then you used to get bonus. Now you're not getting any one of these. Only your salary you're getting. Only your salary you're getting. So what are they doing with the money? The PPP used to pay all of that, and according to them, still steal $300 billion from the treasury. And we never increased taxes in the way that they have increased taxes. 200 tax measures. And we had a cash grant where we used to share money out to children. We had a program where we used to give electricity and water free to pensioners. All of these things scrapped. So where is all the money going? They're not stealing, so 300 billion automatically saved. Right away, 300 billion is being saved. But where is it? It's either they are wrong and they were lying when they said so, or they are thieving, but I don't know, but I don't know how much money they are stealing. Because if they are saving this 300 billion that the PPP used to steal, they have increased taxes, 200 tax measures across the board. They have abolished a whole host of poverty reduction programs which we had. All the cash grants and everything gone. So what are you doing with all the money? Where is the excess money that you're not spending? And significantly, when we were in office, we used oil, fuel on the world market was $150. When they took office, fuel dropped to 40 something, 50 something dollars a barrel. Where is all this money? Where is all the money? What are they doing with it? How it is that you have to cut the DPP budget by 5 million? You can't give your DPP 19 million, 100,000 US. You can't give your DPP office 100,000 US dollars. But you can pay 100,000 US dollars for Nagamutu to buy a Land Cruiser and to fly around the world. We have to go to the phones now. I'm being signaled I apparently spoke too much. Caller, you're in the air. Good night. You have to speak up and speak quickly, sir.
Yeah, I think that taking off
Sir, I'm not hearing you. I'm sorry. I have to cut off this call. It makes no sense. I would like our viewers and listeners to hear our conversations. So when you speak, when you call in, please make sure that you are loud and you are clear and you are to the point and you are not abusive, because I'll cut you off. The phones have been going all the time while I was speaking. Now I stopped speaking to wait for the phone calls and they have stopped coming. So I want you to think about that. Think about that in your quiet moments. With all the new taxes that they have, they're not paying no increase in salaries. They're not paying no bonus. They scrap all the uniform voucher program. They scrap the cash grant program. They scrap the pensioners subsidy at GPL and water. And they're not stealing 300 billion, which according to them, the PPP stole. We're supposed to be walking on money in this country. Walking on money. 300 billion is more than the national budget. The national budget is 200 and something billion. They said that the PPP used to steal over 3 billion. Well, they are saving that money now, unless they are stealing that and much more. And that is the reason why we don't have money in the country anymore. Yes, sir.
Sir, you are doing a wonderful job.
Thank you very much. Well, apart from the personal, I don't like the personal kind of description, but you see, caller, you understand what I'm saying? If the PPP used to thief all this money, but we build back this country, and we used to give increase salary, we used to give bonus, we used to make the salary increase retroactive to January, we used to give a cash grant program and a whole host of poverty reduction initiatives. All of that gone. So where the extra money is? And the API too. You're getting that calf now. All right, caller. Thank you. We'll take one more call before we say goodbye. Caller, you're on the air. Could you please lower your television down quickly?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sir, you do not want to put that. How can you put a broad pocket man to rule?
Well, I have always said that politicians, if they want to lead by example, they must be successful in their personal life. If a person is a failure in his personal life, how can he manage a country? If he cannot manage his own life, if he cannot manage his own home, how can he manage an entire country?
Exactly.
I use that kind of reasoning myself.
Here to take note into the moment and no see what's going on in our country. Why the Kaiser news?
No, well, that is what I'm. Kaichor News, you will never hear these things on Kaichor News.
Yeah, but
So you, the people of Guyana, have to determine whether they want to still spend money on Kaichor News.
And last week I noticed they have some fools, Nagamutu family, that they want to call you and tell you it's a crap, but they make no sense what they're doing.
No, you don't bother with them,
They
man.
try to fool the guy, these people, they can't do anything more.
Okay, caller, thank you. Thank you very much. This is where my operator is signaling me that I have run out of time, so I have to say goodbye to you. Please enjoy the rest of the week and join me next week as we resume this important discourse. Thank you, take care, and good night.